So on today's video I thought I'd talk about how we ended up working with Chino, Magwheel Records and the legendary Nils. So first off, I have a bit of an apology to make. First off, in my video about Rise, when we were talking about John Pastore in the Supersound label, I made a big glaring error by not actually mentioning that John Pastore did Supersound with another guy called Woody Whelan. And Woody, obviously, would later do Magwheel Records. So when we did the Sexuals and Rise sort of best of releases in 2000, I think Woody made contact with me about obviously some releases he'd put out on Magwheel Records and if I'd be interested in distributing those in the UK, which I totally jumped at because the bands that he was talking about were the Nils and also Chino, and he'd also done a Nils tribute CD called Scratches and Needles. Now, for a little bit of history for people, I honestly believe that with the Nils, we should be speaking about them in the same breath as the Replacements and Husker Du. I think that they were absolutely crucial for the whole Canadian scene and the success that people like the Doughboys had afterwards. I don't think it would have happened if it hadn't been for the Nils. And obviously a lot of people know the Nils through their song Scratches and Needles, which was on the BYO comp back in like 1983 or something like that. Where it's the standout track on that comp, if I'm honest, for me. And so the Nils obviously did a couple of EPs in the 80s and then did an album that got released I think in about 1987 on a label called Profile, which was supposed to be like their big break, and unfortunately that label folded, and I think that sort of led to the band imploding at the time. And you know, we should be, like I say, we should be talking about the Nils in the same breath as the Replacements and Husker Du. I honestly think that Alex Soria was a genius songwriter, a completely genius songwriter. So if we fast forward a bit, in '96 Woody had actually compiled a Nils best of, which sort of basically featured lots of recordings of the band, their two EPs, pretty much everything apart from the album that they did. called Greenfields in Daylight, and he still had some copies sort of around. I think that sort of outside of North America, I don't think it'd been that widely distributed, the CD. And so when he said, I've got some copies, would you be interested in taking it? I jumped at the chance and said, well, if I can stick them as Boss Tuneage, not only for me, because obviously the Nils were a band that I loved as well, so to have them on Boss Tuneage. But the other interesting thing was that Alex had started playing again, and he was doing a band called Chino. And Woody had also released Chino's debut 6-song CD called Malalesh, which again was fantastic, because I think it was sort of like some of the unreleased Nils songs and some new songs, and Alex was really buoyant about that. So in 2001 we put both of those out on Boss Tuneage, and we also took copies at the same time of a tribute album to the Nils called Scratches and Needles that Woody had put out as well. So they came out in basically all at the same time. So I think we gave the Nils was Bostage 543, Chino was Bostage 544, and the Scratches and Needle comp was Bostage 545. So they were a little powerhouse of 3 releases that I was really, really pleased to be involved with. And I know that Woody was speaking to me at the time and said, Alex is going to do some more stuff. And I think coming into 2002, Chino actually split up, but Alex had decided to reform the Nils. So there were definite talks about a new Nils album would be in the pipeline, which was really, really exciting to hear that. And I could be wrong on this, but my understanding is that when Profile went bust, the band were actually bound by a 5-year recording contract with them. So even though the label didn't exist anymore, they couldn't record anything for anybody else, and it just meant that the band was put into limbo, and it all ended quite messily, I think, at the time. And a real horror story, really, that this phenomenal band were sort of cut off in their prime, and it all imploded around them.
Feel the need to do what's wrong.
And so in very late 2004, the news came to me that Alex had basically taken his own life. He actually stepped out in front of a train. He was 39, criminal waste of a genius songwriter. I mean, the band had fought their demons for a long time, I think, and it was really sad. I know that there was a big tribute concert held, and John Kastner played at that, Chris Spedding and people like that. It was sold out. We had been, I'd still been in touch with Woody, because I think there were plans to kind of do some kind of follow-up releases following that, of like unreleased Nils stuff and Chino stuff and the tribute concert itself. But none materialised, unfortunately, for one reason or another. But you know, it's sort of, it feels like there should have been more the involvement that we did with Chino or the Nils, really, than we did on the label, bar, you know, our little footnote basically on the history of a fantastic band. Obviously, fast forward, Carlos, Alex's brother, reformed the Nils, I think, in 2010 or something around that, and they've obviously continued to play and record. And the Boss Tuneage link there is that Emilian, who plays drums for the Nils, also plays drums for Moving Targets. And obviously I'll speak about Moving Targets on another video. But yeah, I was really pleased to be involved, and I think Greenfields in Daylight is just a phenomenal comp, and yeah, just to have that mentioned alongside our other releases on Boss Tuneage is, for me, is a real privilege. Because I think you can say that, you know, if the Nils hadn't existed, then a lot of the Canadian bands that I love probably wouldn't have existed either. So do check them out, and you know, it's phenomenal stuff. It really is. That's it for this video. See you on the next one.
I think it's time for us to look for something new. Just bring to tell all that I once gave to you. Forget the china, silverware, and memories, 'cause it all means nothing to me. Still I'm